Blake, there is no more Nick Saban in the SEC. Let's talk about that and just Brian Kelly in general. We talked a little bit in our last video about this, but do you think that Brian Kelly, if he would have maybe just not had so much success, like right off the bat, the expectations wouldn't be so crazy with LSU and where they're at? Like, it almost feels like they're not happy that they've won like 9 and 10 and this many games back-to-back years. But if it would have just started 7-6 and then won 9 games and then won 11 games, then maybe people wouldn't be so crazy, or are LSU fans just crazy in general?
No, they're crazy in general. Look at the LSU baseball right now. TJ, if they would have gone 6-6 in year one of Brian Kelly and then last year had 10 wins and Jane Daniels would have won the Heisman, we would be talking right now about them gearing up for a national title run. Yeah. It would have saved Matt House from a job, losing a job. It would have saved so many people from losing their jobs. I think that to Brian Kelly's favor and to not his favor, him winning the SEC West in year one hurt him because, TJ, what step back did they take? Okay, they took a step back, but they lost to the same teams almost that they lost to. They lost to Alabama on the road. Okay, well, that team made the playoff. All right? You just did not have the defensive coaching staff, in my opinion, to beat them. But I do think that you bring up an interesting point. Like, what are we discussing? TJ's won 20 games in 2 years. I mean, like, does he need to get better? Does his team need to get better? Is the expectation for him, especially now, to make the playoff every year now that it's expanded to 12? Yes. Yeah. But they're there. They're a couple of moves and steps away. But you asked about a Saban-less West or Saban not being there. TJ, LSU's number one in the nation in recruiting right now. And the issue that people do not realize, and I think that it will start coming to fruition. You know why LSU was not ever able to take that hump over Nick Saban? It was because he out-recruited him, okay? Yeah. Now, and LSU always recruited in a top 5 light. That's why they had the success. TJ, it's why they're number 2 in national titles behind Alabama in the last 20 years. They've recruited at an elite level. Now they're taking it a step up. I think the number one thing for me is not that Brian Kelly can't outcoach guys in the SEC. I think he can. I've seen that he can. The difference has been what they're doing right now in relation to recruiting, because they go and get Bryce Underwood, Decorian Moore, the number 1 wide receiver, who committed on our show. I mean, he is committed. They've gotten 4 number 1 players at their position that have committed to this team. Under Saban, TJ, that would have never happened, ever. Yeah. Okay, and so I look at that and say to myself, okay, the biggest question that we ever had about Brian Kelly was not could he come here and win games. TJ, we pretty much felt that he could come here and win games. If Ed Orgeron can win games, he can win games, believe me. But the question always was, will he recruit? Well, he's ended up with multiple top 5 classes, and now he's got the number 1 overall class in the country. That more than anything, because I think that Brian Kelly, when it comes to coaching on field, I don't know how much of a gap there is between him and Brian Kelly. The reason I say that, he went for 2 to win the West and got it, okay, yeah. And outcoached Nick Saban down that stretch. I think recruiting has got to be the biggest thing, and it's going to be the detriment to Kalen DeBoer in a lot of ways. So that, for me, has been the biggest thing, is what they've done in recruiting so far.
A lot of hype around Ole Miss this year.
They are, in my opinion, meaning Ole Miss, I think that they're a top 3-4 team in the SEC. I think they're going to make the playoff, TJ. Because I've seen Lane Kiffin win 10 games with worse personnel, and now he's got really good personnel. The question becomes, can you take all those guys from the transfer portal and make yourself a playoff team? I don't like the Prince Yellen, the defensive end that from Florida that went over there. I don't like when he talks that kind of stuff about Florida. And I know that you're not going to say that because you're a Florida State guy. But when you talk all that crap, okay, you better live up to it. And TJ, guess how many sacks Prince Yellen had against LSU? 0.
Well, I think you can count on one hand how many he had for the year.
Well, I think he had 10 sacks, but
2 hands then. 2 hands.
Yeah, 2 hands. The problem though is Okay, Walter Nolan's the same thing. When they played better competition, they at times were non-factors.
Yeah.
So how do you play into that? How does that look to the future? But here's the thing. I know Pete Golding very well. I've known Pete Golding. He's from TJ, where this studio is. He's throw a rock, and that's his mom and dad's house. Okay? That's how close he coached at Southeastern, where I played. Okay? Pete Golding is the difference in Ole Miss. The way that he's recruiting, the different style. TJ, they jumped up 67 spots from total defense from one year to the next, and Pete Golding being there. I think that they're one of the top teams, but they're going to have to beat a team like a Georgia that they have this year. They're going to have to beat some of those elite teams. They go to LSU on the road. They don't have Alabama. TJ, outside of those two teams, they're going to win every game. So at minimum, I think that they're a 10-2 team. The question becomes, can they go into Death Valley and Baton Rouge and win? Can they go, or can they be at home and beat Georgia? I don't think that they can. So at worst, they're 10-2. I think at best, they're 11-1.
Blake, where can people follow you and find your work and all those things?
AYS Sports on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever your social media, podcast, whatever you want to do it, AYS Sports, or Ruffino and Joe Show. RUFFINO. Me and Joe debate a lot. We argue a lot on there. So you can find us in either one of those.
It's a good show. I enjoy it. So thank you very much for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
He makes my blood pressure way too much.
It's good for you. So thanks, man. I appreciate you, buddy.
No problem, man. Thank you for having me.